Parasitic lifestyle. That means you're always taking, and not giving anything back. So psychopaths would be, would have a party like some of these guys here. They have a party that costs $10 million or something, for the company. I don't know who that was, but remember that big thing? I can't remember who it was. Poor behavioral control. Sometimes with psychopaths, they can they go bonkers and they'll do a lot of harm to other people. But there are psychopaths that can control that and just do the harm subtly. Prisons are full of psychopaths. You all understand that? Because they think they should have that money and you shouldn't, or whatever the hell it is. But there's some psychopaths that are much more controlled. You know a lot of people like this?
Yeah, my friend's ex-husband.
Promiscuous sexual behavior. Early behavioral problems means they have problems as a kid. Lack of realistic long-term plans, Impulsivity, that means they just go off on a tangent. Irresponsible, failure to accept responsibility for own actions. Whatever happens, you're not going to convince a psychopath they had anything to do with it. You'd never convince Ken Lay that he had anything to do with Enron's failure. I don't care what you did to that guy. If you kept him in jail for 100 years, whatever you did, you're not going to convince Ken Lay any way, shape, or form that he did anything bad. And I'm not against Ken Lay. I'm just saying, if he's a psychopath, right? Many short-term marital relationships, juvenile delinquency, revocation of conditional release. That's in, they let people out on condition and they don't stay with it out of prison. And criminal versatility. They're able to do a lot of different crimes. And then they can have a combination of narcissism and psychopathy. This is a big corporation is psychopath. There you go. Remember I just said that? I didn't make that up. There's a book, and the thing I want to get called The Corporation. There it is, the movie. I got it. I wanted you to see it. And it actually talks of the corporation as psychopath. But what they didn't understand is, if the human psychopath takes over the corporation, the human psychopath can take out the corporate psychopath. Say the corporate psychopath isn't as powerful. That's why they have to be very careful. The corporation.
Did that movie Tom Cruise years ago, The Firm?
Yeah, that was a law firm or something.
He was a top lawyer, yeah.
They were probably psychopaths, the ones running that they didn't care what they did to people. But Tom Cruise came in with some kind of moral philosophy. Catching the corporate psychopath, it's not easy. You got to catch them before you hire them. They say. Weeding out executives who have been declared bankrupt, failed to manage personal debts, or held responsible for failed institutions. Yeah, these institutions go down the rat hole, and a year later they're running another institution because it's somebody else's fault, and they can say it in a way that sounds realistic. Well, this ought to be pretty good. Catching the corporate psychopath. I want to read that. Risk management. The only way I know you can catch them is, and also I know a lot of psychopaths. They will actually tell you what they're going to do, but then they give a ha-ha and you don't believe them. Like Hitler, he wrote down what he was going to do in a book, and nobody believed him. Mein Kampf, right? They'll tell you what the hell they're going to do to you, but they're going to say it and then ha-ha. Because they're so invincible that they can tell you and then do it to you, and you're so stupid that you're not going to believe it. No one? If you listen very carefully, occasionally they'll tell you what they're really going to do to you. And there's no bargaining, there's no arguing, there's no change in view for a psychopath. You cannot convince a psychopath to change from their position to another position. They can't back down. So if you see somebody that's so rigid that they can't change even on what day it is, they lie like hell, and they think that everything they do, they're a genius, you can start to say, it's possible. Now, there are people that do that that aren't psychopaths, though. But Stalin, let's see if it says Stalin, then we'll get off this. And Stalin, I think there's no, I didn't know Stalin, but I'd say he was probably right up there. Don't you think?
All dictators do psychopaths.
Yeah, well, maybe that's true. Maybe all dictators are psychopaths. Really? They call him a psychopath. No picture of Stalin is absurd. You couldn't talk to these people. You couldn't say, "Hey, I'm really not guilty. I didn't do anything." You know? You think you could talk to these people? I didn't do anything. You were mistaken. Well, let's wait and see the evidence. And if you're married to a psychopath, you got to get the hell out. And if you got a boss that's a psychopath, they tell you got to get the hell out because you can't fight them unless they're very difficult because they're great liars. They're masters at lying. And if you don't watch yourself, even though you know something's different, you're going to start to buy into the lie. I mean, they're the best. And there's some guy that said the only thing you can do with psychopaths is put them all on the same island and let them go at each other and have fun. But when you put them with people with the moral ethics, we don't have a prayer against them. We have no prayer. If you have a standards, if you have an ethical position, if you're based on a story, you have no prayer against a psychopath. Nothing, zero. You can't beat them.
You don't have a story, man.
They just want all these things for themselves, that they're geniuses. And so it's not a friendly thing, psychopaths. There's a lot of work being done on psychopaths and corporations now because of to try to figure out why all these companies were willing to send thousands of people down the rat hole, right? So there's a lot of interest in that now. Try to prevent it. And will they prevent it? No, they can cut back on it. And if you accuse somebody of being a psychopath and you're wrong, you get in a hell of a lot of trouble. You understand? You can get in a lot of trouble. And it's very difficult to assess. It takes a long term. It takes like looking at a long term over a life, many years of their life. You can't just say, because I've done things you could consider were psychopathic, right? Maybe total selfish self-interest in my life. All right? So if you just took that one incident, you could say he's a psychopath. But you can't do that. You have to look over long periods of time and see if there's a consistency of obsessive self-interest.